13-year-old girl bought a broken-down old car for her adopted black dad. What they found inside changed their lives forever. Walter Booker, a man who had taken in children no one else wanted, thought his life was finished when his Uber car died. But with nothing more than coins and crumpled bills, Emily and her siblings scraped together $50 to buy him a wreck that barely held together. Walter climbed inside, searching for salvageable parts, and froze. His hand struck something heavy beneath the seat, wrapped, hidden, and gleaming. The children leaned closer, hearts pounding, as Walter slowly uncovered the find that would alter not just their fortune, but their legacy. Before we go any further, we'd love for you to hit that subscribe button. Your support means the world to us, and it helps us bring you even more powerful stories. Now, let's begin. Walter Booker wasn't the kind of man the world celebrated. He never made headlines, never owned a mansion, and never sat in a corner office. Instead, his legacy lived in the quiet footsteps that filled his modest home. Children who had no one else. Children who had been left behind. He had adopted so many over the years that neighbors lost count. Some were black, some white, others Latino or mixed. Strangers would whisper, "Why take on more when he already struggles?" But Walter only smiled. To him, family wasn't measured in bloodlines or bank accounts. It was measured in how many children you refused to let slip through the cracks. Still, kindness didn't pay the bills. His lifeline had always been a beat-up Toyota, the car he drove for Uber long hours into the night. But when the engine finally gave out, silence felt heavy over their home. No more rides meant no more steady income. Every bill on the kitchen counter looked taller. Every sigh from his youngest felt heavier. One evening, as Walter sat on the creaking porch steps with calloused hands pressed together, Emily, his oldest adopted daughter, watched him closely. She was only 13, but the lines of worry in her face made her look older. Behind her, the younger ones huddled, whispering, passing crumpled bills and loose coins between their palms. By the time they stepped forward, their little savings barely scraped $50. Emily held the small bundle tight, her voice trembling as she said, "Dad gave us a home. Now it's our turn." They pulled their coins together to buy what no one else wanted. A broken-down old car abandoned at a salvage yard. To outsiders, it was nothing but rust and faded paint. But to those children, it was hope. Something their father could strip for parts. Something that many wouldn't give up. When they wheeled to the driveway and told Walter it was theirs, he didn't speak at first. His chest tightened, eyes glistening. He laid a rough hand on the car's hood as if it were sacred. It wasn't about the car. It was about them. Children who had once been broken themselves, now giving back with the little they had. And in that quiet night, under the dim glow of a flickering porch light, Walter realized something. Even in their poverty, they were richer than most. The old car sat in their driveway like a wounded animal. Its paint was chipped down to bare metal in places, windows fogged with dust, one tire sagging into the dirt. It wasn't worth fixing to anyone else, but to Walter's children it was proof that they hadn't given up on him. Every morning before school they'd gather near it, some wiping the windshield with worn rags, others running their fingers across the hood as if polishing away at shame. Neighbors passed by and shook their heads. Two older men across the street muttered while sipping their coffee, "That Booker's wasting his life. All those kids and now a junk car, what's he thinking?" His friend chuckled. "Man can't even feed himself. Love don't pay the mortgage." But the children heard none of that. Their world was focused on Walter. They remember the nights he skipped meals so they could eat, the mornings he walked them to school even when his feet itched. But the slow collapse of your inner authority. For them, you become remarkably easy to manipulate. Emily had broken her piggy bank for this. Daniel, just 7, had handed over the coins he saved for candy. Maria gave up the dress she'd wanted for her birthday, trading it in for a couple more dollars. When Walter ran his hand over the car's hood, he felt every sacrifice humming inside its rust. He wanted to tell them it was too much, that they shouldn't have done it, but the words caught in his throat, their wide, expectant eyes silenced him. So he went to work. Every evening after his odd jobs, landscaping, handyman repairs, anything that paid a few bills, he returned to the car with his tool set. The driveway became his workshop. Grease smeared his hands, sweat stained his shirt, and the air carried the sharp scent of oil. The children gathered around, watching as if he were rebuilding not just an engine, but their future. At night, when the work light flickered and moths circled the bulb, Walter sometimes paused, his heart clenched at the thought of failing them. But then he'd look at Emily, sitting cross-legged on the pavement, notebook in hand, sketching ideas for what the car could be. And he'd hear little Daniel whisper to his sister, "One day, Dad's going to drive us all to the park again." In those moments, Walter found strength. He didn't see a broken man anymore. He saw children who believed in him enough to give their last pennies, and that was enough to keep him turning the wrench, bolt after bolt, deep into the night. The nights grew longer, and the air carried the chill of autumn. Walter worked through it all, crouched inside the hollow shell of that car. The children often sat in a circle on the driveway, sharing hushed laughter or trading stories while he tinkered. They didn't realize those hours mattered more to him than gold, hours where they were together, bound by hope rather than fear. But one evening something shifted. Walter leaned back from the engine, wiping his forehead with a rag. His hands searched under the driver's seat for loose bolt he thought had rolled away. Instead of cool metal or dust, his fingers brushed against something solid, something that didn't belong. He paused. The driveway buzzed with silence, broken only by the creak of the night insects. His hand traced it again. Rough edges, heavy, wedged deep into the seat's frame. Curious, he tugged. The object resisted at first. He grunted, pulling harder. With one last jerk it came free, wrapped in layers of oily cloth. A strange weight filled his palms, heavier than any car part should be. Emily's voice broke the quiet. "Dad, what's that?" Walter didn't answer immediately. His chest tightened as he slowly peeled away the cloth. Dust lifted into the air, and beneath the grime, a dull yellow gleam caught the work light. His breath caught. It wasn't brass, it wasn't junk metal, it was unmistakable solid gold. For a moment he just stared, unable to move. His mind ran wild. Was it stolen? Forgotten? Who hid it here? His hands trembled as he turned the bar, the children gathering close, their eyes wide and reflecting the glow. One of the younger boys whispered, "It looks like treasure." Walter didn't speak. He couldn't. He felt the weight not just in his palms but in his soul. Years of hunger, of patching holes in shoes, of fighting to keep their lights on. Suddenly, all those nights pressed against this single bar. The children's voices rose in wonder, but Walter stayed quiet, staring at the gold. He wasn't thinking about riches. He was thinking about responsibility, about whether this was a blessing or a test. In the distance, neighbor peeked through their blinds, curious about the murmurs, muttering to another, "That Booker's always got some crazy scheme. Probably junk he's pretending is worth something." They didn't know, they couldn't know. Walter sat frozen in the glow of the work light, gold gleaming against his calloused hands, and for the first time in years he felt the ground beneath him shift. Life had just changed, but he didn't yet know how far. The gold bar sat on the kitchen table that night, its heavy glow cutting through the dim light of their modest home. The children circled it with awe, whispering as though they might scare it away. Walter sat at the head of the table, elbows resting on the wood, chin pressed into his hands. He hadn't spoken much since bringing it. Inside, the weight of possibility pressed down on him. He had seen quick fortunes ruin men before, neighbors who stumbled into money only to fall into ruin faster than before. But when he looked around the table, he saw witty faces filled not with greed but with trust. They weren't asking for riches, they were asking for a future. The next morning, Walter carried the bar wrapped in an old towel to a trusted pawn appraiser downtown. The man's eyes widened the moment the towel fell open. He turned the piece under the fluorescent light, tapped it, waited, then leaned back slowly. "It's real," the man said. "Pure, you're sitting on a fortune." Walter's breath hitched, but he only nodded, tucking the bar back into the towel. He didn't sell it, not then. He walked home through the cool air, heart pounding. It wasn't about cashing in quickly. It was about what came next, how to protect his children and their gift. Weeks passed, and small changes began to ripple through their home. Walter found ways to discreetly convert part of the gold into funds, just enough to pay debts, repair the leaking roof, and keep the pantry full. For the first time in years, the refrigerator hummed with fresh groceries, and the children came home to meals that didn't have to be stretched thin. But Walter didn't stop there. He opened savings accounts in each child's name, small deposits. That would grow into something solid when they were older. He spoke with a financial advisor, his calloused hands gripping the pen tightly as he signed papers that secured trust funds. The neighbors began to notice. The once fading house had new paint. The porch light no longer flickered, and the children wore shoes that actually fit. Gossip floated over fences. Booker must have found himself a rich donor. Nah, probably government aid. He couldn't have pulled this off himself. Walter heard the whispers but never corrected them. Let them wonder. The truth wasn't theirs to hold. It belonged to his children. Through it all, he kept working. He still picked up handyman jobs, still drove rides when the old Toyota sputtered back to life with the help of salvaged parts. He wanted his children to know the gold was a blessing, not a crutch. And every night as he passed their rooms he heard new sounds, the scratch of pencils as Emily studied late, the laughter of the younger ones, who no longer feared the dark, the soft murmur of dreams spoken aloud. Gold hadn't just filled their bellies, it had restored something deeper, dignity, security, hope. Months rolled into seasons, and the little family's life looked different. Not extravagant, not flashy, but stable. Something they hadn't known in years. Bills were paid on time, food filled their shelves, and the children grew in confidence, no longer carrying the shame of being the poor kids on the block. Walter, however, never forgot where it began with a handful of coins scraped from tiny palms and a broken car that everyone else would have abandoned. That memory weighed heavier on his heart than the gold itself. One Sunday afternoon, he stood outside their home while the children played tag across the yard. Neighbors gathered nearby, watching, whispering among themselves. A few finally admitted, maybe we were wrong about him. That man, he raised more than kids, he raised hope. Walter turned to his porch, eyes resting on the old car. He hadn't scrapped it. Instead, he left it there as a monument. Rust and all a reminder of the moment. His children believed in him more than he believed in himself. When people asked about the sudden change, Walter would smile quietly and say it wasn't gold that saved us. It was love, the kind you can't put a price on. For his children, the lessons sank deeper than any inheritance. They saw with their own eyes that miracles don't always come wrapped in light. Sometimes they hide beneath broken seats in a forgotten car, waiting for hands brave enough and hearts pure enough to uncover them. And so the man once pitted as a struggling father became a symbol of something greater, a man whose legacy wasn't the gold he found, but the family he built. And that's how one broken-down car bought with love carried a family from struggle to legacy. If this story moved you, don't just scroll away. Hit subscribe and join us for more powerful stories like this one. And remember, sometimes the smallest sacrifices hide the greatest treasures.